Welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we're going to focus on the gatherings and the meetings for the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which took place in the United States of America, and more specifically in Washington, with the participation of Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdulati and the Minister of Finance Ahmed Kojok as the main title, the main theme of the gathering for this year. And this specific timing was, of course, the Iran war in the Middle East against the United States and Israel, and the negative impacts and the negative repercussions of such war on the global economy for the years to come. And we will be shedding more light as well on the meeting of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli with the Minister of Finance Ahmed Kojok upon his return, upon his arrival back into Egypt, and the discussions that took place regarding his participation in those meetings in the United States of America. However, we'll be starting straight away with the main top stories for today, and they come through the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdulati. As President al-Sisi greeted the President of Djibouti, Ismail Omar Guelleh, over his win in the presidential elections held earlier this month. The President made these remarks in a phone call with the Djibouti President, hailing his wise leadership towards the development and the prosperity of Djibouti. President al-Sisi added that he looks forward to boosting the strategic partnership binding both countries onto wider cooperation in various fields. He further called for the intensified coordination on the regional issues of mutual concern. For his part, Djibouti's president offered a gratitude over the presidential gesture, stressing the importance of the continued cooperation in all fields in light of the brotherly strategic ties between Egypt and Djibouti. And still with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who received the Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation Organization, the ICAO, and the Secretary General Juan Carlos Salazar. During the meeting, President al-Sisi affirmed the appreciation for the organization's role and the ongoing cooperation between them, especially with Cairo hosting its regional office. President al-Sisi stressed the importance of developing the civil aviation sector to support the economy by upgrading the infrastructure, improving the airport efficiency, and increasing capacity. For his part, Salazar praised the Egyptian effective management of the air traffic despite the regional challenges. Both sides also emphasized the importance of continuing to strengthen the cooperation between Egypt and the ICAO. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received the Kuwaiti Foreign Minister Sheikh Jarrah Jaber Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah in Cairo. The Kuwaiti Foreign Minister conveyed to President al-Sisi the greetings and the appreciation of the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah. The Emir of Kuwait expressed his country's aspiration to intensify consultation and coordination with Egypt to achieve the regional peace, stability, and the security of the Arab states. During the meeting, President al-Sisi praised the deeply rooted historical ties and the strong fraternal relations between the two countries. He stressed Egypt's firm rejection to any violation of the sovereignty of Kuwait or any other Arab states, asserting the full support for the Kuwaiti security and stability. President al-Sisi affirmed that the security of Kuwait and all the Arab states is an integral part of the Egyptian national security. Minister of Foreign Affairs Badr Abdulati held talks with the Kuwaiti counterpart Sheikh Jarrah Jaber Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah. The foreign ministers praised the deeply rooted relations between Egypt and Kuwait, stressing the necessity to enhance the bilateral ties in various fields. Both ministers expressed the aspiration for holding the 14th round of the Joint Committee before the end of the current year. Regarding the regional situation, Foreign Minister Abdulati reiterated the Egyptian firm and supportive stance to Kuwait, affirming the Egyptian full support for the measures taken by Kuwait to protect its security. The talks also tackled the political consultations to de-escalate the tensions in the region, as well as the latest developments in the U.S.-Iranian negotiations. And finally, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Badr Abdulati, stressed the necessity of concerting regional and international efforts to de-escalate the tensions and prioritize the dialogue and diplomatic solutions to the region's crises. This came during a meeting Abdulati had held with the counterparts from Jordan and Luxembourg on the sidelines of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. The ministers exchanged views on the latest regional developments. Abdulati reviewed the Egyptian efforts to support regional security and stability. He also asserted the Egyptian aspiration to enhance the bilateral relations with both countries in various fields. And we will be heading to the main report of the daily debate for tonight, focusing on the efforts of the World Bank to be helping the countries mostly affected by the negative repercussions and the negative impacts of the Iran war for up to $100 billion in the next few years. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report. Stay tuned.
The World Bank President Ajay Banga said the bank could mobilize $80 billion to $100 billion in funding over the next 15 months for countries hit hard by the war in the Middle East, eclipsing the $70 billion it provided during the COVID pandemic. That would include $20 billion to $25 billion in coming months through a crisis response window that allows countries to withdraw up to 10% of funds earlier than planned from previously approved programs, with another $30 billion to $40 billion that could come from repurposing existing programs in about 6 months. Banga's comments on the sidelines of the spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank reflect growing recognition of the huge impact the war is already having on global growth and inflation, with developing countries likely to be hit the hardest. The IMF on Tuesday cut its global growth outlook due to the war-driven energy price spikes, offering a range of scenarios that all include lower growth and higher inflation. Absent the conflict, the IMF said it would have upgraded its growth outlook by 0.1 percentage point to 3.4%. If the war lasted longer and greater needs emerged, the bank would have to turn to its balance sheet and headroom to find additional funding to reach $80 billion to $100 billion. Banga told an event hosted by the Bretton Woods Committee that would come on top of the bank's normal lending. Banga, who met with the head of the International Energy Agency and IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva on Monday, stressed that it would take time for energy market to settle down, even if the war ended and there was no more structural damage to energy infrastructure. The global economy can still recover rapidly from the shock of the Middle East war if the conflict ends in the next weeks, but the situation will be worse if it drags through the summer. Georgieva said the International Monetary Fund was in talks with countries hit hard by higher energy prices and supply chain disruptions to discuss their financial needs. Both Banga and Georgieva urged countries to focus on narrowly targeted and temporary measures to ease the pain of higher energy prices and to avoid broader energy subsidies that could wind up further stoking inflation.
Welcome back. You're still watching the daily debate, and I'm honored to be having with me over the phone to be shedding more light on the important topic of the daily debate for tonight, Dr. Osama Murad, the financial expert. Dr. Osama, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the daily debate and Nile TV International.
It's my pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. First of all, how do you see the main differences between the current economic global crisis that we are all living and we are all witnessing the negative impacts of it through the war between the United States and Israel and Iran in the Middle East, and what is the difference between such a crisis, such an economic crisis, than the ones that we have had in the 2008 financial crisis and in 2019-2020 the COVID-19 pandemic?
There's a huge difference. The pandemic had a long-term lasting effect. You could expect a trend, you could expect market movement. What we're witnessing in the last 2 years is a series of shocks and ambiguity, extreme volatility in the market. We've seen highs and lows of gold and commodity prices within days. We have seen 6-day wars, 11-day wars, 18-day wars. Everything is extremely short-term. Everything is extremely volatile. We've seen spikes in oil and gas prices of 15% up and down on a daily basis. So it's what I can say or predict. We're not. I don't agree with the World Bank that we're seeing stagflation. We're seeing a new economic model which will erupt out of the turmoil and volatility we're currently seeing.
Yes, Dr. Osama, the new economic model, what are the main descriptions for such a model? What can we be anticipating in the years to come?
We can anticipate new alliances, new shapes of economy. Definitely this combined with what's going on in the AI world, nobody can predict the outcome. But we're seeing a totally new, evolving economy. Of course, China will play a much bigger role. The U.S. will lose some of its influence. Europe will retreat. So it's going to be either in the bipolar world between the U.S. and China, or we will find a new model. The other thing is that the reliance on the Gulf and petrodollars might change because new players have risen. The Iran war has seen people circumvent embargoes, countries having reserves, countries trying to get their reserves steady and hold them on. So nobody can really predict what's going to happen, except that definitely the U.S. will lose some of its influence. And this is what Trump is trying to do, is to delay that or circumvent that by taking the world to a series of shocks constantly.
Doctor, you've mentioned that there will be a new economic model, new restructuring for the global economy. And how do you think this will be affecting negatively the oil prices as we can see right now? And as we did see over the past 50 days, even the United States has been affected negatively.
the United States have the largest oil reserves above the ground in tankers and reserves. It's using the oil as a trading mechanism. I think we're going to suffer extreme volatility again. We might see 75, 80 again, maybe lower, and then we might see a rise above the 120, 150 by the end of the year. So it's part of the volatility model, or the major part is oil.
Can we anticipate to be depending on other alternative energy sources other than the fossil fuel, as you mentioned, Doctor?
Countries are trying to build up other alternatives, but it takes time. We might see a reversal in countries' attitude towards nuclear energy, and maybe more reliance on hydrogen. Or nitrogen might erupt as a new source of energy.
And how do you see the efforts, as we did see for the past couple of days, or in the past week more specifically, the efforts of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, even the International Energy Agency during the spring meetings of those institutions held in the United States to be containing the economic crisis?
I think that the efforts will be too little. The institution cannot support the countries in the current turmoil, because the inflation of food and fuel will make the world suffer. And what is more difficult, I refer back to the volatility, is that especially the emerging markets and maybe also Europe are not ready to deal with such a volatility model.
Yes. Do you think that we are shifting away from globalization and leaning more towards the fragmented and smaller trade blocks?
No, we're moving. We cannot go back from globalization. The communication and distances are too short. But what we're seeing is a model of alliances, and those alliances are not steady. So we're seeing alliances which change situationally or over time. So that's the difference in the model currently.
Yes. In your opinion, Doctor, what are the concrete actions that can be taken by the World Bank, by the International Monetary Fund, as we did see the statements from the officials, the senior officials from the World Bank, stating that $100 billion could be pumped into the global economy to be assisting the countries mostly hit and mostly affected negatively by the Iran war in the Middle East? What other concrete actions that could be taken by those financial institutions to be cushioning the blow from the crisis?
I think it's the role of those financial institutions to offer more hedging models and to offer commodity options, because there is no sense in giving those countries money or loans which they have to pay with interest, and they misuse or don't know how to apply and use. There should be a framework of commodity options or hedging to counter-strike the inflation which is expected to happen.
Yes, Dr. Osama Murad, the financial expert, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Nile TV International and the Daily Debate. We'll be having a quick break. Stay tuned.